Banana Slam Jam.
So guys, Monkeys and I have decided to do a bit of a revamp to the podcast. So we have rebranded, renamed it to the Banana Slam Jaron podcast. We couldn't think of a way to not make it look like it was all about me with his name thrown in there. So the best play on words we could come up with was this. But I like it a lot, and our hope is that moving forward, anyone who runs into the name of the podcast maybe gets to see, hey, oh, I know that Jaron guy, or I've watched that guy lose on stream, that Banana Slam Jaron guy. So that's this is episode 1 officially. Moving forward, our plan is to go long term. We have created a Patreon, exclamation point podcast. On my stream. Hopefully Monkey sets it up eventually on his, but that's up to him. I will. For that information, we are going to be doing viewer submitted content for anyone who wants to support the podcast. If you guys don't worry. We'll have plenty of bullshit to be talking about for the remaining time of the podcast itself. But we'll be doing stuff like, guess the MMR of the game I submit. What hero would I pick in this game? What item should I build in this game? All that kind of stuff. So it's meant to be a little bit of fun, a little bit educational, a little bit of derpy stuff that will take up about a third of the podcast if we do have content. So that is what we're going to be doing to help support the podcast. But aside from that, we're just going to be doing exactly what we were doing prior. And our goal for the atmosphere of the podcast is just to talk about the life of a gamer. Talk about Dota, what happened to us that week, anything relevant that we feel like talking about in the scene, and kind of just roll with it. So me and Monkeys, or at least I think you and I both agree, Jaron, that we think our conversations could potentially be interesting. What do you think?
I mean, I'd say at least like 20% of them right now.
Okay, at least 1/5 of the people watching will enjoy our conversations, and that's plenty enough for me. So, real quick, I just gave a whole spiel, but that's under the assumption people know who you are, Monkey. So, introduce yourself, buddy.
Didn't I already introduce myself like 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, that was 3 weeks ago. But, if we're rebranding it and people see Banana Slam Jaron podcast, episode 1, this is what I've been waiting for. I wasn't going to watch it before, but now I'm going to watch it. What
I am Monkeys Forever, or Jaron. I've been playing Dota for 17 years now or something. I'm an offlane player for North American team 4 Zoomers, and I carried BSJ to a minor.
That is true. Monkeys did indeed carry me to a minor. We both have history together on teams. We played on Leviathan. We played on Team Runes and got last at a minor. But we also beat EG in a qualifier. That was the pinnacle.
That was a highlight of our career.
Yeah, that's a highlight of my career. Monkeys have been to some majors and stuff, but that's about it. We did give an intro episode a while back. It's on my YouTube at least, if you guys do want to check that out for more details. But just in case anybody who wanted a TLDR of Monkeys and I's, history or whatever, that's it. So, Monkeys, you are on 4 Zoomers. So as a little bit of a start off, You've been a busy bee. We've both been busy. You're playing in a couple leagues. I heard, at least from your Twitter, I believe I saw that your results recently haven't been what you're hoping for. Is that true, or did I misread it?
We still got into the upper bracket of both the tournaments we're in, so it was really just group stage games that ended up being irrelevant in the end, but it could have eliminated us from ESL and stuff. So we just dropped a couple of series in really silly ways, and it was just there was about a week and a half where we were struggling pretty hard. But
do you have a reason behind it within the team dynamic, or just a few bad games? Do you want to talk about it? I'm here for you. Nobody's listening.
It's I mean, you know how it is with competing. At one moment you can be at the top of your region and understand the meta entirely perfect, and just go about playing your game and play Dota your way, and it just everything clicks and everything's working together. But then you know, a team figures out your drafting style or your strategy or whatever, and then, you know, like it just completely shifts the entire dynamic of competing. And it was just one of those weeks where, you know, people were just figuring us out, and we weren't really adjusting properly.
I was gonna
But
say that real quick to interject. You were saying that you feel like sometimes you just feel on top of your game, right? Like
yeah,
sometimes it really just feels like your understanding of the current meta, current heroes is just up there. And somebody in chat already asked, you know, why is it that tier one teams are able to have such longevity, but sometimes you'll see teams like they didn't specifically name TNC, but just like show up out of nowhere, like win a major or like have some short term success, but then not be able to maintain
yeah,
it. And it kind of goes with your point, though, is that Dota is an ever evolving game that a lot of these tier one players, you know, they've been around for a long time, or, you know, some of them at least get the leadership, you know, someone like
yeah,
Misha, where he's got the skill, but he gets the leadership from someone like Puppy, who has been around. And Dota's a cyclical game, right? A lot of the
yeah.
understanding requires knowledge of every hero in the game, knowledge of experience of matchups, ways of playing the map that you've accrued over time. And for tier 2, tier 3 players, they're usually capable of playing at the tier 1 level, but being able to do it consistently is the
Yeah,
problem,
it's
right?
it's a lot of it really is like I mean, if you look at our history of games, we really had like we've had so many different heroes and styles and ideas. And but like, you know, we've ever been evolving over the past, you know, 6 months. I don't know exactly how long we've been together. I think it's 6 months. But but over time we've just dabbled in a ton of different heroes. And it kind of gets difficult when you start having like so many ideas and so many strategies and so many counters to like certain heroes and certain hero combos and stuff, because like you still have to like remember everything that you're learning over time, because like the way metas work in competitive Dota is like, you know, like it's ever evolving, as you said. So like, you know, you can hit a new meta where it's like, and this is all region specific. Like every region has its own meta, and every region is constantly just like changing nonstop. But what what is difficult is when a meta kind of goes back to something you were doing 4 months ago or something, and you don't really realize that like you're kind of like you're kind of
You're
going
back
back
there
to where you
again.
were. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And like you have to like you have to recognize kind of the like the patterns and stuff, you know, as you're and it has to be like really like quick and like on the spot, right? Because you don't want to like use too much reserve time in, you know, the first phase of the drafting or whatever and stuff like that. So it's just like, I don't know. I'll just chalk it up to, you know, a bit of just like inexperience, and we're still
So
just
what I'm
learning
hearing is
and
you're
getting
blaming
up.
Sammy Boy.
What? No, VSJ, get your beef with Sammy out of here.
Okay, just confirming that we're on the same page here. So, yeah, I've been. That was a lot of the reason why I stopped playing on teams. That frustration of hitting it's like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. Sometimes that's what
Yeah,
it felt like. Uh, and sometimes, especially as a tier 2 player, tier 3 player, what I realized looking back, which is something that's cool, is I feel like my understanding of Dota has grown. Is I remember when we were on VGJ, and I just had this inkling that PL was really strong. And then we just
yeah,
started picking it, and it was working, and we didn't really know why. You know, like it was just, oh, like we're winning with this hero. I guess we'll keep picking it. And a lot
yeah.
of the time for me, when I look back, what really made me feel like a tier 3 player when I look back was that every time I was losing and every time I was winning, I didn't exactly know what the major difference was there. And it's like, why can't I identify this consistently? Why can't I, you know, identify why I'm winning or
Yeah,
losing? I
yeah.
can't say it really any
I,
better than that.
I mean, I remember that really clearly too. And that like we got to a point where we were actually just straight up first picking your PL every game. And like
Yeah.
we would use the first three bands back then,
Yeah,
it
we were
was, right?
banning, I believe,
Yeah, yeah,
Jug, Brew, and
and Legion or
no
something like
Puck.
that. What?
Jug, Brew,
Oh,
and Puck.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you were like so confident in the PO if you had those three bans or whatever, and when we banned for you, like you just felt unstoppable in every game. And but the interesting thing about VGJ is I remember I think we lost it was like the qualifying match or whatever for a major against Optic Gaming, I think it was, and we lost a series to them. And after we lost that series, even though like if I remember correctly, we lost a series due to play. You kind of lost a bit of confidence in PO because we lost that series to Optic, because you were like, oh, they figured me out, like they figured this PO out. And after we lost that confidence, like that it really changed like our entire drafting style and everything, right? Because like as soon as you lose confidence in a hero, you're not you're not playing with that like without that fear anymore. You're not playing with like that just, oh, I'm just God in this game. Like they have to deal with me, right? Like it's more like you're more fickle, right? You're nervous.
Wait, what?
And,
Oh, we're losing you in the call. 1 second, buddy. You're clear now.
all right, lovely.
So you were talking about losing confidence in our Phantom Lancer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I was just saying how when you have the confidence in a hero, your play style is entirely different, basically. Like you just like you exude that confidence. You play as if you're untouchable, right? But then when you're kind of like unsure about your hero or your play, then that's when like the entire dynamic changes around the hero, basically. When you're not as confident, when you are a bit nervous about them being able to counterplay your aggression or something like that.
I've talked
And
about this concept on stream, by the way, where you need to be willing to grow from learning, but you also need to be so confident in what you already know going into a game. Because in the middle of a game, you're not learning anything, right? Like,
yeah,
like any tangible. Like maybe you'll learn quickly, like, oh, I wasn't survivable there, I'll play differently in the next fight. But in terms of understanding of your hero, you've done the work up until that game, right? And that confidence, like maintaining that and making sure that you don't let it get dissuaded by just results. It's hard to not be results oriented, honestly.
It is. It really is.
And that was one of my biggest problems as a player. Like, you're absolutely right there. I definitely gave up on myself. And I think I've reflected on this, by the way. We haven't talked about this, but I have reflected on this, and I really think it ties back to back then. I didn't fully know why it was working. So when it stopped working, I didn't know how to like make it work again. I didn't know how to adjust to the opponent team making it not work. Because at that point,
like
if I'm like, okay, it's working for this reason. Okay, they countered that reason. Can I make it work again? What can I do?
Yeah. Like what differences do I have to make to my game to enable like this play style again, even if they do have these pseudo answers or whatever.
And I think that's important for people of all brackets, by the way. This doesn't just apply to Pro Dota, but if you can attempt to understand why something you're doing is good, even at the basic level of like newer players, if you can try to understand that, eventually, like that practice of mindset, I think is really important. It's not something where you're suddenly going to have super high understanding of Dota, but if you're just constantly asking yourself the why, that's what I love realizing now. That's one of the crucial lessons that I've learned, is that I know I always encourage critical thinking, but I never really realized just how important the why is. I would see the what from other players. I'd see what they're doing. I'd see the builds they're doing. I would see the meta. But I never just quite grasped how important why. Just the why. Why are they picking these heroes? Why are they buying these items? Why are they playing this way? Why are they top instead of bottom? Why are they bottom instead of top? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then and that's really where at least like competitive Dota really starts to become so interesting, because like that PL pick maybe is going to start getting countered by I'm just gonna throw out random heroes like a Legion Commander, an Underlord, or something like that. But then like you can counteract that, or counteract like these heroes that are like decent against PO, but not like absolute counters or whatever. And you can either make up for your hero getting countered by drafting save from a support like an Oracle or something, or by itemizing to prevent your PO from like getting perma rooted by an underlord or something. Like the reason Dota is so interesting and just fun to play all the time is that there really is a solution to everything. Like you're never so trapped that like you can't do anything. And that's why Dota is a beautiful game, because you can just I don't know, as long as you're thinking critically, the answer is there as long as you look for it every single time.
The beauty of this is I recently made like a angry rant guide about talking about one of the higher ranked EU players ruining my game with his itemization. And part of my like mindset behind his itemization was, okay, we're winning this game. We have to assume, so it's similar to the draft, right? Like if you're in the middle of a game or if you're drafting, we're winning this game. We have to assume the opponent's not just going to keel over and die, except that we're winning. How are they going to come back in this game? Like, what items are they going to build? Who are they going to try to kill? All that kind of stuff. And the idea was we were snowballing with a tiny. And I was like, okay, the way the opponent's going to try to come back in the game is they're going to build tankiness items and BKBs such that they no longer to die to tiny, right? And then once they want to get a kill, who's it going to be on? And it was my Morphling. And I was upset because my Morphling went E-Blade. And so by the time he had E-Blade, the opponents just had like triple bracer on the supports or, BKBs on the cores, because that's the items they had to go anyways.
Yeah.
And then the Storm naturally built Orchid, and my Morph just died to an Orchid, at 16 minutes, and then he died again afterwards because, he doesn't have a way to deal with it. And it's the same in drafting, though, where if we're winning with PL, right, say that's what happened back then. We had won like 3 or 4 series in a row with us. It was like we second rounded PL like 2 or 3 games in a row, and then 1 or 2 games people second round banned it before we could pick it second round. So then we're like, okay, if we want this hero, we're actually going to have to pick it first. And what happened was people are going to respond, right? They're going to start trying to figure out, okay, well, seems like VGJ is only winning with PL. What can we do in response? And then, like you said, you have to figure out, okay, they're going to counter with this. What can we counter their counter with? Like, what can we do to respond to their response? And that's what drafting is. Like, that's why I love it in draft, especially because you said there's always a solution. It's like the 5-head play that happens in, like, Tier 1 Dota. It starts happening in any team that's organized.
Yeah.
Is this back and forth of, okay, we're going to do this. I think they're going to respond with this. And then when they do, we're going to have this 4th pick prepared and all that. And we're going to redo our lanes. Like, we're prepared to flex the pick. We're ready for their response to this. Like, in accounting for those responses is some of the hardest but most important parts of drafting. Like, today, there was a Spectre 4th pick, okay? And they left 2, like, the other team had 2 picks to respond. And when I know it's a bad Spectre pick is when they pick Spectre as their overall win condition. Like, their entire draft was revolving around Spectre.
Yeah.
And the
like
last 2
picks
picks were just Viper Void. Viper Phases Void. And it's like, your win condition is the Spectre. The opponent has 2 picks left.
Yeah.
And they just completely eliminate your chance to win the game with 2 picks. Which means you didn't factor in the response. And in your draft, you missed something, right? You had this idea of how you're going to win the game, but you didn't think about how the opponent was going to respond to that. Because a good team, they see the Spectre in the draft, and they're like, we know this is the win condition. We know that this is what we have to respond to. And the beautiful drafts that I see are the ones where, say it's that team that has, say the opponent has last pick, overall last pick. You have those 2 picks in a row where you present this win condition, this like way of playing the game that the rest of the opponent's heroes have not responded to yet, and there's not a single hero in the game that responds to both, right? They can't deal with both. And I'm like, I don't know what they pick here. They can't outscale the Spectre, and they can't gank the Ember. So they have to pick one or the other. So either Ember's going to run the map freely, or Spectre is going to outscale us. Like, that's the choice we have in the draft, and it puts us at this disadvantage. So, people were talking in chat about, they wanted to hear us discuss a bit of meta, but I think that that's something that applies in every single meta, and that's why, even though the most broken heroes are always consistent, usually you have like the 5 or 10 heroes that are first rounded every single game or whatever. That's why over the course of like a week or 2, and like in a league like you guys are playing in the Omega League, you can just see random picks pop out of nowhere, right? You just like, okay, now we've come to the full circle that Drow and Arc Warden are broken. People only started picking them in the first place because we saw a bunch of Terrorblades, right? Like we
Yeah, and also something that, that like, to go even one step further than that, like something, the reason that drafting is, again, like it is so important when it comes to Dota, because like, I'm trying to think about how I should like word this. Basically, every player has their own like individual experiences and like ideas, and like, in how they view heroes and what those heroes accomplish. And I mean, like, sure, you can obviously say like this hero generally is this or whatever, but like, you can look at a lot of heroes in different ways, and like, what I mean by that, is like puck position 5, or stuff like that. Just Dota is very versatile, is my point. But when it comes to individual teams, basically you'll see all of these like random lane combinations and stuff that are just so strong that no one else has like done in 2 years, or maybe has ever even thought about before, and it just enables for really wild changes to like the entire game. For example, usually when you're going into a game, you have a general idea of what to expect when you see certain picks from certain teams. Like, against Thunder Predator, for example. I'm not going to talk about recently, but 4 months ago or something, Thunder Predator. Anytime you saw like an AA opening, an Ancient Apparition opening, they would always pick an Ember Spirit right afterwards, because Ember AA was just such a strong combo for them. They would just dumpster every single lane. So, and no one else did it except for them. They were the only team that would just pick Ember AA in the first phase, like every game, and they actually were running over so many teams with that. And it really just, it makes Dota, it keeps everything so interesting and so fresh, because you just, every team has all of these crazy ideas and is just thinking about new stuff that they could possibly present as counters to these really strong lanes that Thunder, like for us, that Thunder Predator is doing, or Quincy Crew or whatever. And it's just it's just I don't I'm just putting a lot of emphasis on how unique drafting is, and like how much thought and planning really does go into drafting for every team. And like, I feel like I see a lot of people that watch competitive Dota just kind of like look at drafts and be like, oh, I can't believe this team got out drafted. Like, how didn't they see this coming? But it's like, I don't think you understand that there's 118 heroes or 17 heroes. I actually don't know the exact number, but there's a lot of heroes in Dota. Like, and the majority of them are viable. So you really do have to be thinking about like all of these different directions, and there really are so many directions, so like every draft can go. And sure, there's the optimal picks and everything, but then you have to take like comfort into account, and you have to take individual players into account, and like all of this stuff. So I don't know, drafting is just a very, very interesting concept to me, like as a whole. And as you said, like, I love it, but it's also really stressful at times.
I hated drafting. I mean, I love it in the sense of appreciating what other teams are doing, but I certainly do not miss having to like lay out the flow charts of, we're gonna open with this, we're gonna ban these 3 heroes, they're gonna most likely ban this. If they ban this, we pick this. If they ban
yeah.
And then if they pick that, we're then
so much thought going into it.
And then you like, I remember one of our best draft wins. I specifically remember on VGJ, we were losing to whoever Ritsu was, I think Animal Planet at the time. They were beating us with Sven, because pretty much every hero I liked that patch, like Jug, PL, was countered by Sven. And we couldn't, and Sven was pretty good too. And we couldn't figure out a way to deal with Sven. And they would pick AA Sven a lot, or something like that. It was like some support combo. And they had second picked that support. And we knew in the second round when we were going in that they were setting up a Sven pick. And at one point, Stan King just said, what if we just third pick Sven? Like, what if we just first pick, like, what if the first pick of the second phase was Sven? Like, what if we just do that? And we thought of, like, all the possibilities of what they would respond with. In that patch, there were, like, 3 or 4 really popular meta carries that were picked in the second round of the draft. 2 of them were banned, and the other one was PL, I think. So we were just like, well, if we pick Sven, they can't do anything. So we picked Sven, and I like never played Sven. Like I wasn't the greatest Sven. It wasn't my best hero by any means, and we just won the draft because they didn't have a way to beat it. And even though I wasn't the best Sven player, because we got the upper hand there, the comfort only matters. Like it makes a certain component of who wins the game. But if our draft is just that much better, as long as I play the hero not terribly, I'm gonna win the game. And that's the cool thing about like why specific teams have specific strategies is those strategies are only good enough because they play them so optimally, because they know exactly what deals with the hero. And something I've talked about on panels when I'm at tournaments, something I've talked about on my stream periodically is when the worst thing I think teams can do is try to take a hero. Say you're like scared of complexity back in the day playing Tiny. I always use that example. The worst thing you could do is try to say, we're going to leave Tiny in the pool, and if they leave it, we'll pick it first. Because they just know the hero better than we do, and they're just going to shit on it. And I'm like, I don't think that's ever worked. I've watched it happen at least 3 or 4 times already in the Omega League Europe section where the team's like known for first picking or something a hero. It's like their specialty hero, and you can tell the opponent's running out of bans, so they don't want to ban it, so then they first pick it, and they never win. They just never win, because it doesn't matter how much you know about that hero. It matters how much you know compared to the opponent team. That's the funny part about drafting is, like you said, it can be different for every team. Like there were teams that we would be happy to use Tiny against. It was a Tiny meta. We'd be super happy to play Tiny against them because I was a pretty good Tiny player. We also had a mid player who was pretty good at Tiny, or not mid player, 4 position or whatever. Sammy Boy only played 2 heroes. So the point was that sorry. So the point was that we were super happy to play Tiny against some teams, but like against Complexity, we just first round banned it. Like we were just like, okay, they know Tiny way better than us. We're not gonna touch that shit. During that time. So when it comes to like people saying, it's just that simple, just don't let them have IO, or we're just gonna pick IO. It's like it doesn't work that way.
And especially now, you only have 2 bans before the first pick phase. Like you have to pick your poison. Realistically, I mean, at least I would personally expect every single team should realistically expect the first 3 picks in the first picking phase. Like they should know exactly what direction each team is going to go in. If like X hero is picked, we're going to pick Y and they pick Z. Like those first 3 picks are like pretty predictable, honestly, because like again, you only have 4 or like 4 bans in total, and like you should be able to predict what the enemy team is going to ban against you, because you know yourself, what you want and like what you want to play and everything. So it's like the first phase, like that there's so much just, all right, this hero is going to be banned, then this hero is going to be banned, this hero is going to be banned, this hero is going to be banned. That's going to create this like scenario in the first picking phase, and then like you got to go from there, obviously. But drafting is just drafting's just wild, really.
Yeah, we've definitely talked a lot about drafting in general. It's something that we'll probably touch on numerous times in future episodes, but I definitely think we've talked about it a lot for the recent past right now. My question would be, just as so for the record, people at home, our goal is to have these episodes be between 30 to 45 minutes. That's like the general time limit we're looking at. So with that in mind, my question would be, recent events. We have a new patch, a sub patch. When you are a team, you don't have to give us specifics, right? How long do you think teams often take to adjust their drafting to reflect a new patch? Like a smallish one. When we're talking like a huge patch, obviously that's a bit different. But
huge patches, I would definitely say like a couple weeks, because like you really do have to test lanes, you have to test matchups again, you have to go through the motions and like get comfortable with everything again. With the minor patches, I mean, I don't think the minor patches really. I mean, don't get me wrong, they affect the game, but I don't think they really like drastically kill strategies or create strategies necessarily. It's more so just like like looking at like the minor nerfs and having an understanding of oh, this is going to be maybe like 10% worse against this matchup, or like in this aspect of the game, and we need to like compensate for that a little bit, and just kind of like consciously being aware of that, if you want to go that route again.
Here's
Uh,
okay, go ahead. Sorry, there.
or I mean, that's pretty much it. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that like an example I want to give, since I'm not on a competitive team and I'm not exposing anything relevant to me, would be that Secret was first rounding Anti-Mage several games. They were first picking against Darkseer, like mostly Darkseer. And what happened was that there were certain matchups where Anti-Mage, an example would be Anti-Mage used to be very bad versus TA. And the new matchup for Anti-Mage versus TA was that you would just go Manta Halberd, and then the TA just didn't do shit. So my example of a small patch, like when I theory craft small patches, I would say that is it possible that a team maybe worser than Team Secret that has a strategy like this would say, okay, we pick this anti-mage first round, we get TA'd, okay? Like that matchup used to be fine for us, but now that Halberd is delayed by a minute and a half because they added, a recipe cost to it.
Yeah.
Now, maybe this matchup's not good enough for us anymore, which leaves another hero in the pool that we might have to draft or might have to ban to enable our first pick anti-mage. So the way I look at these types of sub patches, like theory craft wise, would be that it takes like a week or two to have the full effects come in, because it takes a draft that they would previously use, because the heroes that are good are still probably pretty good, right? But I deem how strong a hero to be, how percentage of the time that they would be pickable, and how, like, what percentage of heroes or how many heroes does it take to make them unplayable? If you pick Anti-Mage into 3 hard counters, the hero sucks. But if the hero's good enough, like say Anti-Mage is really good that patch, maybe you could deal with 1 or 2 hard counters and still be fine. But suddenly, if a sub patch changes a matchup where there's like 2 matchups that are unplayable now instead of 1, suddenly you're dealing with a hero you can't cover bans for, right? Like, I'm just giving an example. So I think that that's kind of cool when I'm watching Omega League specifically, where people are still picking the same heroes, and I'm like, I think eventually people are going to realize this hero is not good enough. I'm seeing Darkseer a lot. I'm not going to ask you for your specific thoughts on the hero because, you have tournament games coming up. But I personally thought he kind of I thought he died. Like, I thought he was like maybe an 8th or 9th pick at best now, and everyone's just still first picking him. So for me, I'm kind of testing forward to like, okay, maybe he's still fine, but like, or are people just sticking to comfort because it's 8 hours after the patch came out? But
I'm actually very opinionated about this, but I don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to get you in trouble with the teammates here. The whole idea was for this to be independent of your competitive career without negatively impacting you there.
But for sure, like there are definitely aspects of sub patches that I'm not gonna say every single change in a patch is the most relevant thing. Like some of these like minor nerfs and stuff, like it just it might hurt the landing stage a little bit for a hero, or it might just make a matchup a little worse or a little better. That's how I view the majority of changes. But I mean, for example, the Darkseer change, that was a big change, and I'm not gonna go too in depth, but like it affects a lot of aspects of the Darkseer pick as a whole. But obviously, as you said, maybe teams are just really comfortable with Darkseer and they still want to just like pick it just because they know Darkseer is a very unique hero that is able to create unique scenarios in the draft that just enables what they want to do as a game plan. And sure, maybe the hero is way worse, maybe it's like just as good, or whatever, that like the patch just happened, but like the idea is that teams it just comes back to like teams are going about enabling themselves and enabling their comfort, and just like trying to play out the ideas that they think gives them the best chance at winning, and just like or rather maybe not the best chance at winning, but the most consistent, and like they think that their ideas are hard to counter, even after nerfs and stuff like that. So
What I kind of said was that if a hero is not ideal, like say it's not the best hero in the meta, like, or after we're ignoring a patch recently happening, say Spectre's the third best carry in the game, and I play Spectre way better than I play the best carry in the game. It would be better for our team with me on it to pick Spectre more often than the best carry in the game because
yeah,
my better, like my skill level on Spectre adds up to higher than the
yeah,
power level of that one hero. And I was
yeah,
saying that like when they nerf heroes like this, these are the heroes everyone's been spamming for the last month, you know? So
yeah,
even if teams, I feel like even if teams recognize this Darkseer hero, for instance, may not be the best offlaner anymore. He may still be good, but he may not be the best. Maybe
yeah.
we still have to draft him like he is the best because for our current offlaner, based on the games he's played in the last 2 or 3 weeks, Darkseer is his best hero. Or like for all the games we've played together as a team in the scrims, Darkseer is our best option. But until we get more games in, before we have more time to practice, Darkseer for now remains our best hero. So like that's why I love patches like this specifically
Yeah.
because it's you don't fully realize what's going to happen with it. Like I personally look at carries like Drow and Sven that didn't get touched and I'm like, "Oh, I think people are going to be picking these heroes more cuz the prime carries got nerfed." And then suddenly Alliance first round Sven 2 games in a row today. So like they clearly think something similar, and they lose both games to EG miserably to an Arc Warden. So I'm just like laughing at that because I understood why Alliance did that. You know, it's like, oh, I think Sven might be top tier because the other carries got nerfed, etc., etc. We're gonna try it out with Io. We think it enables it, etc. Like they have a theory, right? You said they have an idea behind their strategy. They're like they believe in it. They think going into this series they're not gonna be able to counter it, and then that's the best part about watching tier 2-esque teams play against tier 1-ish teams. Like I would put EG really close to tier 1
Yeah,
in their current iteration.
They got second at the first major of the season.
Yeah,
so,
it's just like hard when the rosters are kind of like stand-ins and thrown
obviously.
around. But like they're going to dissect your draft if possible. Like they're going to. And a lot of that comes from prior knowledge of patches. You know, like most hero matchups always remain similar. You know, maybe a hero hard counters in one patch and only soft counters in another, but at the end of the day, heroes like Arc Warden that kite you are really good against Fenn. Like that's just what it is.
And also something to add on to that is after these sub patches and everything, especially when they happen in the middle of tournaments, like this patch just happened. These teams they don't get to like scrim on the patch. Like you're literally seeing these teams' initial thoughts on like exactly what they think is going to give them the best chance to like win the series or whatever right after the patch, and they're just going into it just based off of their Dota knowledge. They're just like based on like the past, or like for Alliance for example, they're probably just like, yeah, let's just do Sven Wisp. Sven's a strong hero right now. Wisp is a pretty decent hero right now as long as like you have a Wisp player, and like let's just play our game. Like screw what EG is gonna do. Like just play to our strengths. Like we know we can pull off this combo. And I mean, obviously they did not win, but like they put up good games. They weren't like I wouldn't call them stomps by any means. Like Alliance definitely had good plays and good ideas, but it just wasn't enough. But again, it's just it's something that people definitely forget. When a new patch happens in the middle of the tournament, every single team is just doing whatever their initial thoughts are on what that sub patch is like really going to affect.
Dota's a lot about like feel, right? Like sometimes you can do so much theory crafting, but if you play it out, it's just almost never exactly identically how you thought it would be, and it's all hypothesis at this point. Like when a new patch comes out, they've done the hypothesis, but they haven't gathered any data. Like they've only had 8 hours, so they haven't tested that, right?
Yep, you just kind of got to go into it like, well, we have to choose and go one direction, right? Like you can't.
One of my favorite bands, yeah.
Drafted. Like you can't like oh, we're gonna pick Io and then like I don't even know what's a bad carry with Io, BSJ. I don't even know if I can think of one. Sure, Drow. You can't just like pick an IO and then be like, let's just go Drow now. You know, like there's no synergy there. Like what are you gonna do with that? It's not. I don't know. You're gonna lose with that, really. But yeah, like you just have to. When it comes to drafting, in the end, like you can be as logical as you want to be, but like in the end, you just have to pick and choose a direction that you want to go and just commit and just be like, this is what we're gonna do. This is how we're gonna play the game. This is the idea of the draft, and hopefully it's better than their idea.
I just want to point out that Chad has some really interesting points. You know, I flamed some IO Drow combo, and somebody said relocate into Gust is pretty sick. Somebody also said you could make Drow a flex pick. So there are adjustments, you know, maybe not everything on paper, you know, but Chad, thank you for your 5-head comments. We very much appreciate exactly, you know, what you guys bring to the table. But no, I really look forward to myself watching these. I'm being forced to analyze drafts, right? That is what I'm literally being paid for and living in Ukraine to do. Most of the time I'm on a draft panel, and all I get to do is look at the picks and say, you know, I think this is good or bad and why. And the funny thing about today, I'm going to give my quick experience today, because I did talk about it on stream. Not everyone sees it, but also, you know, I only have like a minute to actually talk about it on stream. So I saw, when I look at opponent's draft, this applies to pubs too, I think to myself, okay, what are they good and bad at? You know, what are the team fights going to look like? If, you know, what kind of hero do I generally need here? You know, do I need a pushing hero? Do I need a mobile hero? Do I need an initiator? You know, what do we need here? And I saw Team Nigma's draft, okay? 4 picks in. They had Clockwork, Phoenix, Undying, and Drow. Okay? I don't know if you... Let's think that ourselves out loud here. Other than Clockwork Hook, there is not a stun in that lineup, okay? But then I thought to myself, if you go in against that lineup, right, say you initiate, there's going to be a Tombstone. There's going to be an Egg. There's going to be a Drow, you know, wailing on you with frost arrows. Whatever hero I have, because they needed an initiator on VP, right? So I'm like, they need a guy that goes in. I need a guy that doesn't just die to all this slowing shit on the ground, right? Like, that's what I need to not happen, because if once I go in, I'm going to be slowed to 0 movement speed. That's what's going to happen. And then they picked Tiny. And I was like, well, VP lost. You know, like, they lost this freaking game. I was like, this guy's going to blink in, and then he's not going to move. And the funny thing is that I've played Tiny in the past for whatever reason. It's just happened. The only reason I know this is I've played Tiny against Undying, and I've played it against Drow. And I was like, man, these matchups feel like ass. I blink in, combo one guy. If the guy does die, best case scenario, I then die. Worst case scenario, he doesn't die, and then I die. You know, so it's like, you know, it's okay if that's a first round Tiny, you know, where that pick is going to be a combo. But out of the first 2 picks in the draft, that's all you really expect out of a Tiny. But when you're 9th picking this hero, it needs to be more than that, right? It needs to be more than just a basic, you know, the later on in the draft a pick is, the more you expect it to have impact in the game, and the better looking game it should have. So it's just funny to me when I see drafts. I love thinking about them that way. And as of now, it's carried me pretty well. But another thing I also noticed, this is going to be my last point, I'll let you respond, and then we're probably going to wrap it up, is that in our first game of the VP versus Nigma series, they got us into the draft late. Okay? We showed up with 8 picks already. Like, we were honestly in the last round of bans when they started us on the draft panel, so we didn't see any of it. And what I realized is how hard it is to analyze a draft when you haven't been paying attention to who picks what in what order, and kind of like consistently keeping up with what's happening. You know, it's kind of like showing up to a chess match 20 moves in and being like, who's winning here? You know, like, you have to...
And being like, how did we get here?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of backtracking required, and in Dota, you know, I don't think it's possible in, like, the minute I had. And my point is that I wasn't trying to make an excuse, but I absolutely picked the draft wrong. Like, I was like, oh, I think Nigma's good here. It's a really good Lifestealer game. But then I watched the game play out, and they had Oracle against Slardar Lifestealer, and it's like Slardar Batrider. And I was like, Slardar Batrider is all their initiation, and Oracle fucks that, and then they just lose. And so But that's something where I didn't notice it because Oracle was the first pick of the draft, and I'm turning it at 8 picks, and that's just funny to me. In pubs, that happens too.
It really is. Like my last thing to just say about drafting is it really does. There are just so many interactions with every single hero, and you really do have to be considering like how all of those interactions are going to be playing out throughout the game. And like as you said, that tiny pick into that lineup, that does just sound awful. Like if that tiny is not going in and like initially killing this Phoenix or Drow or something like that, if that tiny does not get that one line of execution, that the game is actually unplayable. That VP based on what you were saying, that VP draft just has no play. And that's like a really difficult thing to do, because if a Drow and a Phoenix are playing intelligently and actually like playing around vision,
and itemizing properly so they don't die to the
yeah, exactly. Like and let me tell you, pro players are good. They're gonna think about that. Like it just makes the line of execution too difficult to actually reliably get yourself into a position that is advantageous for you. And a lot of Dota is literally just shutting down your opponent's moves and like looking at their lineup and being like, all right, what is their line of execution? How are they going to like get themselves into a position that is going to beat our lineup? And just preventing that like that timeline from happening. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. It's just there's just so many nuances that you really do have to think about at all times. And as you said, it's not something that like you can just jump into and just be like, this is exactly how this is going to go, like right off the bat. It just takes a ton of forethought and a ton of just like just thought in general, and just understanding the game to the best of your ability and trying to get things to go the way that you think they should go.
Absolutely. What I want to say is that in every podcast, whenever I listen to you talk and when I think to myself, we do just love Dota. We appreciate it for all the beauty that it has. Obviously, we experience all the frustrations and agonizing moments that it presents to us. But that is our goal with this podcast, is no better way of wording it than just having a good conversation with the boys and at the end of the day, showing how much we love Dota. And
absolutely, man.
In all facets, whether or not that's the strategical aspect, whether or not that's, the meme aspect that we may be seeing if there's some funny content at some point. But that's why we're here. And I hope everyone watching enjoyed a bit of this. I'm going to let you guys know that every episode is going to be on my YouTube. It'll be up on any platform Jaren wants it to be on if he so chooses. So he can keep you posted if that's ever to happen. Our goal is to also have it on Spotify, and the goal is once a week. If we have crazy, like you guys just love it so much, maybe Monkeys will do it on his own 6 days a week, and I'll reap the benefits of the money there. No, I'm kidding. We might, we'll see. It's gonna be just every episode will be available to you guys. So please, check out the YouTube channel to make sure you get these episodes if you don't see them live. And also, if you are interested in supporting the podcast or, supporting it in order to put your own content into the podcast, including, voting for future topics, as well as, clips that you want to send in that we'll be watching to analyze in funny and educational ways. That's what the Patreon's for, ! Podcast, for that information. However, it is mainly free for most of you. So that's the aspect that we're going for here. So, with that being said, any final words, Monkeys, before we call it for, put the first episode officially in the books here?
Nah, nothing too creative. Just happy to be back and doing it again. We had like a bit of a break there, but just happy to be back. Yeah, I enjoy talking to you, BSJ.
And we're also going to be including some guests. People asked. The goal would be it's going to evolve, right, guys? We're Dota players. We're going to study the meta of podcasting, and it's going to be, we're not going to just have guests. Sometimes we'll have guests for the meme segments, I'm not going to have a Sir Action Slack's guest on our podcast to talk about the strategy of Dota. That would be a waste of time for everybody. So, he would be here for, talking about how terrible your item builds are and all that shit. So, with that being said, just keep in mind, guys, we will be listening to your feedback at all times. So feel free to give it in his channel, my channel, whatever we can do to be better, or make the channel or make the podcast better in any way. So
Yeah,
thanks
absolutely.
for watching, everybody. I'll see you later, monkeys.
See you all. Bye-bye.
Bye, buddy.